Now, whether you love or hate The Last Jedi, one of the lines, or maybe the line that has become kind of synonymous with that film, is the one from Kylo Ren, where he says, "Let the past die, kill it if you have to." And of course, for better or worse, it ties directly into the theme of the film, which is about failure and or learning from our mistakes, that they are our greatest teachers, as Yoda says to Luke at one point in the film. However, if you're someone who really doesn't like that movie, that line almost comes off feeling meta. It almost feels like Rian Johnson himself speaking through Kylo Ren to us, the audience, telling us that I'm destroying your Star Wars, I'm destroying the past and replacing it with this. And I know that might seem absurd at face value to some, that of course Rian Johnson wouldn't purposely want to make a Star Wars movie that some Star Wars fans would hate, till you hear him say this.
I would be worried if everybody across the board was like, yeah, that was a good movie. It's much more exciting to me when you get, a group of people who are like coming up to you and really, really excited about it, and you know it's going to be something that they're having their DVD collection and watch over. And the way that I got into Miller's Crossing, maybe, I don't know. But and then there are other people who walk out literally saying that was the worst movie I've ever seen. Having those two extremes to me is the mark of the type of movie that I want to make. So.
And my apologies for showing that. I'm not trying to get people all angry and worked up about this again. In this video, I'm genuinely going to try and explore where things went wrong with the sequels, and how things could have gone very, very differently with them, could have gone right, which is why I'm doing a series called Saving the Sequels, of which I'm considering this the third part, even though it's not offering up changes like the first two parts and future parts will. And if you want to check out the first two parts, the links will be in the description below. And that's because before going on and talking about more changes to be made, I thought I'd go back and hopefully explore why it was also broken in the first place. Which is why I showed that clip again with Rian Johnson, because I think it tells us a lot about the type of writer or filmmaker or storyteller that he seems to be, which is one that prioritizes a message or a purpose with his work. He doesn't want to just entertain you with the movies he makes, he wants to accomplish something with them. He wants a reaction of some sort. Which is fine, I'm not necessarily criticizing him for that. He's certainly free to be motivated by, well, whatever motivates him, as he can also create stories for whatever reason he wants and attempt to convey whatever message he wants with them, which then also means the audience who consumes those movies and pays for them is free to give their honest thoughts and opinions on it, on either the message and or the quality of the movie itself. And let's be real here, most writers do want to convey some type of message, or they have some type of theme for their story or purpose for creating it, which is not only fine, but you really should try to have a point, even if that point is just to purely entertain with a thrilling yet otherwise frivolous tale about whatever you think people will enjoy. But that said, a problem can arise when you completely are hell-bent on conveying your message, so much so that you're willing to let things like consistency or continuity take a back seat to it, or that in order to get the story where you want it or where you need it, you include what you hope come off as crazy and shocking twists that wow and surprise the audience, but really they're probably only being included because you don't know how else to get the story where, again, you want it or need it to be. And though in The Last Jedi we call these subversions of expectations, they are very similar to the classic Deus Ex Machina, which loosely translated from Latin means God from the machine, and refers to how in ancient Greek or Roman plays, oftentimes at the end of them, a god would be lowered down on stage via a crane or a machine and decide the outcome of the events. And nowadays, a Deus Ex Machina is where a storyteller essentially writes themselves into a corner and just creates something, or something magically happens to get themselves or the story out of it. An example of this would be a hero who suddenly discovers they have this amazing power that allows them to get out of a jam or defeat a villain when they otherwise would have died. And no, certainly not all twists or subversion of expectations are used this way or would be considered something akin to a Deus Ex Machina. Some are indeed carefully planned and plotted out, while others come about completely naturally, they're happy little accidents if you will, and the writer just runs with them and they do allow them to alter or change the story. Game of Thrones is a good example to look at here, because I fully believe that George R.R. Martin, the author of the books, is someone who sits down and just writes characters without a very solid idea where he even wants to take them, or maybe even take the overall story, and that by some combination of luck, happenstance, and a little bit of careful, subtle, and unnoticeable manipulation at times, he gets these characters to converge in incredibly intriguing ways, where anything can and oftentimes does happen. His subversions of expectations, like the Red Wedding for example, do indeed shock and surprise us, but in a completely different way than, say, Luke tossing away his lightsaber or Snoke being suddenly cut in half. Because the moments in Martin's books, or in the early seasons of the show, don't feel like the writer trying to play a game of gotcha, or like he was trying to intentionally fool or mislead us, or to hide what was coming next, or what needs to be done for the sake of moving the story along. They instead feel like naturally occurring events in this other world. And the reason why the later seasons of the show suffer so much, why they're not as good, is because the writers started to guide and force the characters where they needed or wanted them to go in order to start to wrap things up. The twists no longer felt natural, they started to feel very, very contrived, and they often needed characters to, well, act out of character to make events come about, and they feel even more glaring considering just how well crafted the story had once been. Anyway, here, I feel like something very similar happened to the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and though I don't want to put J.J. Abrams on the same talent level as a George R.R. Martin, I do think they have similar writing styles. I think J.J. Abrams, when he wrote The Force Awakens, had some vague ideas about where he wanted to take the story, but really he just started writing these characters without much thought as to where they would end up, that he had no clear vision where everything, and maybe much of anything, was going to go. Which is no surprise considering he is kind of the king of the mystery box approach. Still, even with that approach, it did feel like almost all the characters from The Force Awakens had a sort of trajectory that we could follow, like there was a rough idea for the story in place going forward. But The Last Jedi then pretty much altered the expected course of every character, and I do mean every character. And a lot of people think Rian Johnson did this on purpose in order to subvert our expectations simply for the sake of subverting expectations. But I don't think that's exactly the case. Again, I think for Rian Johnson, making some type of point with this movie was the most important thing. I think he had a message he wanted to convey, and he wasn't going to let anything get in the way, even what The Force Awakens had apparently established about these characters. And I think he's the opposite type of writer when compared to a J.J. Abrams or a George R.R. Martin. I think Rian Johnson works backwards. I think he's the type that starts out by envisioning this clear and all-important ending, which conveys his message, and he works backwards from there with the story. In other words, he's basically writing the ending first and then making sure the characters all get there eventually, railroading them, if need be, down this one singular path towards his ultimate goal. And this is certainly an approach that can work and work extremely well if done right, especially for certain types of stories or films. The movie Knives Out, which was written and directed by Johnson, is a classic whodunit. It's an example of a story where, when writing it, you have to basically work backwards. You have to know the ending before you can even get to the beginning. And in this case, Johnson pulls it off really well, almost as if he's suited to that type of writing. The problem with doing that with The Last Jedi, however, is he already had a beginning that he had to work from. He didn't write the first movie in the trilogy, and hence writing backwards was going to be much, much trickier, since he couldn't go all the way back to the start. And so he just kind of does things to change the characters from what was originally presented or expected. Luke tossing away the lightsaber towards the start is perhaps the most overt and obvious case of this. We all thought Luke was going to be this certain way, but that wouldn't fit the story he wanted to tell. And as I've said many, many times before, you can certainly like The Last Jedi if you want to, and the story it told about Luke Skywalker, or Jake Skywalker, depending on your point of view. All I'm saying here is, I don't think the decision with Luke was made to serve the overall story, as much as it was made to fit into the story Rian Johnson wanted to tell with this one movie. And look, in isolation or taken out of context or presented as a standalone film, and if I don't know anything else about Star Wars, The Last Jedi still has its problems, yes, but the story itself is fine. I don't know if it's as original as some want to claim, but it does get its point across, it does deliver a message, and it does it rather well. But when put into the greater context, which, let's be honest, as a Part 8 of 9 it should have been and should be judged by, it doesn't seem to take into account what happened before or worry about what would happen next. Kylo Ren is the perfect example of this, and I'll get much more into this in the next video of this series, but in The Force Awakens, Kylo is presented as someone who, though torn, wants to follow in the footsteps of his grandfather. He wants to finish what Darth Vader started. But, and even though sticking with that theme would make Kylo a better and certainly more consistent character and make more sense for the overall story, I mean, imagine if Kylo kills Snoke because he wants to proclaim himself a Sith, a Master Sith with Rey now at his side as his apprentice, and to personally rule the galaxy, if that was finishing what Vader had started, which could then tie all the way back to Anakin in Episode 2, talking about how someone should be made to make people agree on everything in the name of peace and security. Anyway, instead of running with that idea for Kylo Ren, that he will stay true to the purpose of Darth Vader, that he may even die that way, he's changed and gives up on that goal simply because Snoke makes fun of his helmet. But of course, this will then ultimately allow Rian Johnson to take the character and have him deliver that now famous or infamous line that I mentioned at the start of this video, that Rey should let the past die and to kill it if she has to, in stark contrast to that line from Yoda to Luke about how the past and failure is our greatest teacher. And so I wouldn't be surprised, considering Rian Johnson probably started with this idea of failure and learning from it being the theme of his movie, and then he wrote from there, if all along he envisioned how there would be this scene of Yoda, our wise old hero, telling Luke, the lost or fallen hero, that failure is the greatest teacher. And how that would then contrast against what Kylo Ren, who clearly Johnson wanted to become the main antagonist of the story, had said about letting it die, how he had said the opposite of Yoda, and that everything else he did with the movie or the story was to get us to those and probably a few other scenes or moments that Johnson had in his head from the very beginning. And so therein lies the whole problem with the sequel trilogy. You had J.J. Abrams start it with likely no true clear idea where he was going with it. Then Rian Johnson came in and told a mostly self-contained story with the middle part, one that altered what the characters had been for the sake of the story he wanted to tell, and that didn't really care what would be done with them in the next movie. And then after that, J.J. Abrams came back, the king of the mystery box, the one who never seems to be able to finish what he starts, had to come back and not only finish what he started, but also try to make sense of what had happened in The Last Jedi. And so again here, what I'm going to do with this series going forward is fix the first two movies by setting more definitive things up in the first movie and making the second one far less self-contained. And yes, I know and agree with those who have said in the comments of the first two videos that it's much easier to fix what already is than to create something original, which is one of the reasons I'm not going to fix the original episode 9. I'm instead going to create an entirely new version based on the changes made to the first two. Not to mention, yes, I still am working on my own unique and completely original version of the sequel trilogy, so I guess you can say those will be my true tests on my storytelling ability. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think. Is the root of the problem with the sequels two completely contrasting writing styles, not to mention the fact that, again, there was no overall game plan or outline in place from the start? Whatever you think, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.